today's workshop is going to be pretty engaged, pretty hands-on. We're going to do a lot of work together as much as we can in the time allotted. So today, most people come through this workshop and they have an experience of, oh, that's a lot of stuff. I wish we just focused on one of the areas. That's a really common complaint I get when you fill out your eval sheets later. Know that I already know that one. But the point of that, there's a reason that we make you uncomfortable and we go through all this stuff. It's because we want to give you this whole framework, and we want to touch on all the parts of it so that you see that you actually do need to do them all together. The work that we do typically takes a couple of years with a company, at least, to start to get doing a majority of these where you're really scaling and growing, as Ben pointed out in their experience. But we want to give you a taste of each of them, and along the way, hope that you can distill some of the ideas of how we do the work so that you can see not just what we're doing, but how we do it, and you can begin to do some of that work internally. So all of the stuff that we're doing and then some is in the materials that we have today. Like there's a book, and you could just read the book, right? But many people have read the book, and then they can't actually put the things into practice in their company without some outside coaching. I want to give you the benefit of that. Even if I could sign you all up as my coaching clients, I wouldn't be able to do that, or I can't work with that many people. So I'm going to give you enough of how we use so that most of you can go out and find what parts of it will really make a difference for your company today. So we're going to go through people, strategy, execution, and cash. We're going to do a little bit of work in each one. We're going to reveal some of the way we do. And we've got some worksheets and some notepads for you today. But these are really the 4 decisions that can make a huge difference in scaling up your company. So I want to talk just kind of about the kinds of companies that we're interested in. The first stage, right, where there's startup, scale up, and screw up. Those are the big things that we like to talk about, right? So startup is the startup phase, right? You're just getting something off the board. You might have customers, you might have a product or service, but it's not really finding traction, it's not growing yet. That's the phase where you're really trying to develop some consistency and some momentum, the startup phase. And in fact, we do a little bit of our work. The EO organization that's sponsored, that I'm also a longtime member of since about 2000, we have an accelerator program for early stage companies in many cities around the world, and I do accelerator training for those accelerator participants. So that's that program. But we're mostly concerned with this middle stage, right? The gazelles in the middle. So after you get to a couple of million or 5 million, and somewhere between there and 500 million, if you're a fast-growing company doing 20, 25% or better for 3 or more years in a row, we call that a gazelle. And the people that we engage are usually in one of 2 places. Now, I don't know where you are. I won't ask you to raise your hands just yet to save you the embarrassment. So either you're growing like crazy, but things are a mess, and you're looking for some help to bring order to it. So that's one category. The other one is you're like kind of plateaued. You got a little bit of growth every year. It's not, there's no crisis, but you're unsatisfied because you just can't, like, why are we kind of in this place that we are like a rut? And so our work is designed to address either one of those conditions. And of course, the elephant is the big one, 500 million or to multi-billion-dollar companies, and they're just trying not to screw up, to hang on to all that strength. They're powerful and they're big, but they're also slow-moving. And we're interested in this phase, and this whole framework is for this middle stage. The other thing I want you to get, and you'll recognize this yourself, is that getting to grow your business is increasingly difficult. With each stage, there's fewer and fewer companies that make the cut as we go. When we look at data for across 28 million companies in the United States, the number of companies that make it past 50 million is very, very small. 17,000 is the number in this particular set of data. So just getting over $1 million in sales, only 4% of the companies that start up and intend to do that actually hit that number. So with each stage, right, and of course your peaks and valleys don't hit in the same places, right? They don't happen at magic round numbers along the way. But you all know, because I know because you're here, you've been in business for a little while, that there are moments where you're just flat. You can't seem to grow. But thank God you're that. And then you change something, and you have the potential to grow, but you also have the potential to fall off a cliff, for things to go really crazy. And we call that the valley of death. So you've implemented some new thing, and hopefully if you've put together enough of the Rockefeller habits and our framework for scaling up, you don't die in that place when you change up something. And you'll see as we go through that, they do make a really significant difference. So enough about that. How many of you are familiar with the original Rockefeller habits? Can I see a show of hands? That's the one you know. Okay, good. So just a couple notes about scaling up. How many of you know or have read Scaling Up, the latest book? Okay, fewer of you. So let me just say a couple things about it. So the 4 decisions paradigm is new, and we've added quite a bit of new content to the original, the core of the Rockefeller habits. We've expanded our work in strategy significantly. We've added quite a bit in cash and people tools, and we've added more examples to the book and to our coaching materials as well. So expanding that all the time. The other thing I want to tell you is that what I'm going to share with you here today and the work that we're going to do today is not stuff I made up on my own. Sure, I've contributed to it. Sure, I've used some of it. I'm good at this work. But there's now 180 coaches like me around the world who bring deep experience in running businesses of our own and have now sort of gone to the next stage of our career and begun to coach full-time. So we work concurrently with over 2,000 clients worldwide. And there are some areas like the Middle East, I think we now have 10 or 11 coaches, most of them centered in Dubai, who work around the region. In San Francisco, we only have 3 coaches where I live, just outside the city. So some places have more or less. There's nobody that I know of dedicated here right now, but we're starting to work here this year. So like that. So there's a great deal of thinking and collaboration and evolution of our tools that goes on with that. The other thing I want to tell you is that there's some really great books. How many of you love to read business books? Okay, now be honest. Okay, how many of you know you need to do it, but it's kind of a struggle, kind of a chore, and you may or may not be successful? Okay, good. So there are some books that are just brilliant, right? Top Grading is one of them that I'm going to talk about today, but it's brutally hard to read. And our whole goal as coaches in the Gazelles framework is to take the best material and break it down, make it easy, make it simple and practical so that you don't have to struggle to put things into action, so you don't go into like paralysis of thinking and analysis, and that you can actually begin to do stuff, which I love. So I want to begin kind of our first thing today. And the first thing today is to actually have you just reflect for a minute and think about, what do you need to get right now? If you'll listen today as we go through our work for what really matters to you right now, this week, this month, this quarter, and you'll listen for that, then, I'm only going to hit on a few things today. But hopefully, you can figure out how to use what we talk about today and the work that we do to inform what's most important to you. So take a minute now, privately, quietly, independently, think about, what are you really grappling with? What's your top challenge? What would be just fantastic if you'd get it from today? What would you most love to get right now? So think about that for a minute, and then after you've done some private thinking, I'm going to have you share with people around you. All right? Go ahead and do some private work. I'd like to hear, what are you here for? What are you listening? What would make the biggest difference for you today?
So quickly, I'm Kelly, and I was talking with Jennifer from the Chamber of Commerce, and she was saying that she's really interested in learning more about today's habits so that she can apply them at the Chamber as far as when it comes to the bigger picture and picking out what they really can do, maybe figuring out what their core values are and their core functions and their core services, seeing what people really do value in the community for them being the voice of business for all of us. And then as far as us, with the merger that just happened at ProService, acquiring Hawaii Human Resources, we're just really working on making sure that our clients are taken care of and that our staff is empowered to be able to engage with our clients as high as we would hope that they can. Yeah. So we're working on that. Yeah, I'm the communications person, so I'm really hoping to get that down.
Merger is a moment of great opportunity, but some real challenge in marrying two families, two cultures.
Yes, beautiful. It's been great, though.
A couple things. Let's see a show of hands for some of the areas. So if you feel like your biggest thing that you're dealing with, what you came up with today, lives in the world of people, would you show your hands? Your top concern is in the area of people. Okay, good. And how many of you, it's strategy? Okay, good. And then how many of you, execution? Okay, and this is usually one where people aren't honest, but you could raise your hand if cash is on your mind. Good. It's okay. Those of you who are secretly raising your hands. I know and understand. Here's one thing I want to tell you, though. Sometimes what you think it might be something else from a different perspective. So one example that I think of frequently is a guy a little over a year ago who contacted me in Southern California, and he said, God, Bill, I love what you did about top grading today, and we'd really like to begin to implement some of those people skills, and I just know that like if we just had some more salespeople, like we could really take off. Like, oh, okay, so talk to me more about it. So we talked for a minute, and then after a minute I said, you know what, I can't start with top grading work with you. And I don't think it's appropriate yet because you have a strategy problem. And you're just not going to attract interesting people. And no matter how good we are at selecting and interviewing and developing them, the top grading stuff doesn't really kick in until you've got a strategy that people want to come on. So when you have a differentiated growing strategy, the kinds of people that want to get on your team are really great. So we have some work to do first in strategy. Now, he didn't really like hearing that. Because he didn't want to do that work. He just wanted to put some bodies in, right? But I think it made a difference as he did go to work and start to develop, what is my strategy, and what are my values, and what's my purpose, and who's my core customer, what are my brand promises, and what are we actually good at, and how do we differentiate ourselves, and some of the things that we get into in our strategy work. So let's get into it, right? With that in mind, I'd like you to listen from that place that you came up with today in your thinking just now and in your conversations for what matters for you. I want to talk first about kind of the organization of this temporally. So in time, what makes a difference and why is the stuff done the way it is? So there's what we talk about long-term thinking, and living over here are some strategy pieces, purpose and values and BHAG. And I saw as I toured Pro Service Office with Ben this morning, just the extraordinary way they have things like this, like deeply ingrained across the company. And a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, I don't want to put values on the wall, but we're going to come to that and why it makes just a massive difference to actually have values infuse everything that you do. And another one that's my personal favorite is purpose. So, and I actually often think of purpose and values both long-term, but also kind of here, core, like not even in time, but deep within us, each of us individually. And then BHAG, we'll talk about in a minute, is big, hairy, audacious goal. BHAG is your long-term, like 10-year or more. I have a 30-year BHAG that's designed to hit when I hit 80. So I've been working on it for a couple of years now, and it's a very big goal, right? And y'all are helping me do it. So my BHAG, I'll just share it since we're on the subject, is to impact 5 million business leaders by the time I'm 80. So I keep looking for opportunities to work with more people and to accelerate and expand the kind of work that I do and the associates that I work with so that I can have a bigger, broader impact. So that's my BHAG, and it inspires me and fills me up, and I'm willing to give my life and my work life to that. So core then is kind of innate and through it, and something like purpose, right? My purpose is empowering and helping entrepreneurs, business leaders, to build a better world. I think each of you has a vision for something that makes the world a better place, and I'm really interested in helping you to fulfill on your vision and being that person. So those things, like, there's no way to finish that, right? That's a thing that'll be undone when I'm dead and gone. And I'm willing to and interested, moved by, I'm really inspired by the opportunity of living as somebody who gives their life making a difference, right? So that's kind of that. And then in the strategic time frame, 3 to 5 years out, how do we get to a 5 million impact, right, as a person like me, and with my values and with that purpose, how do I start to do that? So then I think about, well, where do I want to play? So I've been working on the West Coast, and I'm like, oh, but I lived in Hawaii as a kid. I should be doing some work in Hawaii. So I've started now to set dates and to begin to come here regularly. So I've expanded my sandbox a little bit. What are my brand promises? What are people can count on from me? What can they count on from you? What matters? What things hold you to your word? So if I promise something, is there some catalytic mechanism, some promise or guarantee that I can do that fulfills on that? What are you actually measuring? Ben talked about profit per X, or the thing that they're looking at when they're engaging folks in that kind of measure that informs the decisions that you make along the way. And then what places are you going to focus? What kinds of things would you want to undertake? So I'm now expanding some of my work into a book and some online content and so on. So those are in my 3 to 5 year time frame. They're not things that I'm doing or finishing, at least. I've begun them in this year, but they're things that are intended to come out in that. And then that takes us to our annual plan. Well, annual planning is pretty tactical, and in annual planning, we think about what are my current strengths and weaknesses and what opportunities and threats are showing up right now. And when we see the connection between those things and some of the long-term ones, we see ideas for actions that we could take this year, initiatives that, and then for each of those initiatives, we have particular metrics that we want to do to know whether we're actually doing them or not. So some of those, and then when we work with clients, and I recommend that you all do this, we actually do quarterly planning. So when I met Vern, I think it was 2001, and my wife actually went through the program. We were both members of the Entrepreneurs Organization back in those days, and she went through an early program that led to some of this work, and with Vern, and then I started to get some of that stuff back and then to apply it and see what there was to do as we were going through as a company that, and I did twice-a-year planning, and then sometimes if I get busy, I would do once-a-year planning, and I'm here to tell you that's not enough. So it's great to do an annual plan, and then you want to update it every quarter, and we'll talk about that. So when we meet and work with clients, whether they're big clients or small clients, we're actually doing a little update every quarter and then against some big annual objectives. So we're doing something every quarter. We'll talk about that as we go through. But the whole left side of this quarter and this year and the year ahead are really live in the world of tactics. And then all those other things help us to figure out where to go to. And we want to see as we're doing this stuff that those things actually line up and connect. You can see the connectivity to it. All right, let's do another exercise now. So we're going to do an exercise now using the Rockefeller Habits Checklist. And if you'd find that in the workbook, you should have this little workbook here. It looks like this. And if you turn in one of the first couple pages here will be this checklist. How many of you are familiar with seeing this checklist before? Not that many, good, but some of you. So here's how I want you to use this today. We use this in a couple of ways. And in the time allowed, I don't need you to read every line or do everything like that. If you look at this, the numbered lines are in kind of a brown color, and those are what I want you to focus on. You can please ignore, for time, the check boxes. I usually look at check boxes to understand the colored line and in year 2. But for right now, to begin, look at the colored lines, 1 through 10, and then score yourself as a company, right? How do you think you're doing? And then how many of you are here with teams? You're here with other people from the same company? Okay, good. And how many of you are here, you're the sole representative from your company? Okay, good. So we got a pretty good mix. So here's what you're going to do. You look at these lines, and you're going to number them, give yourself a score of 1 to 10. So 1 is, you really suck at this, right? It's like completely absent, or you're just terrible, you fail to do it all the time. Or 10 is, you're super awesome, there's no better to get, you're it, right? So score yourself 1 to 10 on each of the numbered lines, and then just put a score there. Then, I'm going to have you work on that for just a little bit and go through it. I'll kind of gauge the room and how you're doing, and I'll time cue you. Work privately, quietly, and independently. Then I'm going to have you compare. If you're with a team, compare with the other people on the team. What are your low scores? So after you've scored yourself, pick the 2 lowest scores, and then you're going to compare with somebody else from your company or with just a partner at the table and share what your lowest scores are. And think about then, from your 2, what's the 1 that you want to focus on for the next quarter? So of your couple, 2, 3 lowest scores, what's the one thing that you think you should focus on? And see if you can align on one, and then we'll get a sense of where we're at in the room. All right, everybody, a little private, quiet work now. All right, everybody good? All right, so this is your first big takeaway. This is the first bite of the elephant. This is your focus area, the one thing that you're going to do. And then you've got the list of 10 that you can go to work on. So you do the same thing then each quarter, or as you complete one, you can go back to the list and you could say, okay, what's the next thing? And you do the same kind of process to score yourself. in the second year of working through these things, where we start to feel like we have a lot of them done, then I start to go through and use the check boxes, and I'll check things off. So that's kind of like year 2. But initially what we do is really as simple as this process, and I do it with people every quarter with the folks we're working with. So simple, you can do it yourself, you can follow through it, and you can find your own way to do some of these things. So the other thing I want to let you know is that when you do this as a team, it's really valuable to notice and remember some of the way that I did it. So if you introduce this to a leadership team or even your middle managers, ask them to review it, to look at it without prompt. Ask them to think about, score the team themselves, and then pick it, and then roll up your scores, and then look at what the low scores are, and then have that discussion as a team. Here's the thing I'll tell you. I see on a pretty consistent basis there's a disconnect between what the CEO or the founder or the entrepreneur thinks is the priority and what the rest of the team thinks. So, and one very common one is the area of strategy. So in a CEO's mind, the strategy is abundantly clear to everyone. And it's often not clear to the rest of the team. So one of the things that you want to really watch for and not prejudice or lead in is what's picked. So let your team pick the whole thing, then have a discussion as a team as to which of the lowest areas to focus on for the next quarter, and then let that, but use the wisdom of the whole team and know that if you're the leader, that probably your view is not entirely accurate, right? There are lots of things that we just don't see or that people actively keep us from seeing when we're running a business, and you want to use a process like this to do that. You'll see as we go through the thing, I'll try to share with you some of the ways that we facilitate or lead these things so that you can do them yourself with your own team, even if you don't have a coach. And one of them is invite people to think independently, quietly, privately first, and then collect up the data or the scores, throw things on the wall. You'll see, I'll talk about how we use Post-it notes for some of the exercises, and then have the discussion afterwards. Why is that important? Because there are some really bright people who don't talk as much as people like me. When I get in a room, I just like fill it. I talk all the time. I talk before I listen, right? I am not shy. I don't hesitate to fill the room. But you have lots of really smart people that are overwhelmed by people like me. And those voices are really valuable. Your team will be much more valuable when you use a process to make sure you hear from those people and not just from the noisiest, most dominant characters on your team. Right? So let's just see a show of hands. If you pick number 1 as your area to focus on, please raise your hand. Okay, a couple of you. Here's one of the ones I'll tell you. Number 1, I don't think we give enough credence to. This is one that you want to recheck as a team. Very frequently, what the rest of your team will say, or what an outside coach would say, your need to focus on number 1 or not, is often very different than our own self-judgment, self-analysis. And the reason is that we often think the team's more aligned than it is. And we think we're in a better shape than we are. But if you look around your organization and you see problems, you know that there's a problem with the leadership team. The organization is always an amplification of whatever's happening in the leadership team. So if people seem divided and at each other and so on, you can count on there's some issues there on the leadership team side. And I don't think it's in today's stuff, but the work that we do there to really get that started, or one of the key things we do is from Pat Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So Pat Lencioni's really great reading. All right, this is in your materials. This is our paper version of the one-page strategic plan. And most of you will notice that it doesn't really look like one page. So you could either call it an 11 by 17, a poster-sized page, or front and back page. But I think it started at one page, and then it sort of has gotten out of hand. But there are things like core stuff that we talked about, purpose and values, and our strengths, the core competencies that we have. And then there are these strategic things in blue here. This is our long-term targets and our profit per X and that BHAG and brand promises and so on. And then the weaknesses and the trends going out in the world. And then all the rest of this yellow stuff is the execution planning. So this is 1 year, this is 1 quarter, and then this is the theme that helps keep the quarter alive. I'll come back to that. And then here we are with your own accountability, your role in that. So this is an area to personalize that. So this is the paper version. You can begin to fill that in as we go through the day. There's also another sheet in there called the vision summary that is 1 page. It just has a few salient points. I love to use that with our teams to create a printout for that, and that's in there also, a vision summary. it sort of goes back to our one page of our one-page roots, and you'll find that in there. But let me tell you this other secret. So I found we now have a software tool, and it makes it just fantastic. And I'll put a link to this as well, so you don't have to write it down right now. But this is Align Today. And Align Today is the primary software, and there are a couple other things, and then we've had some clients try to use project management software, which isn't quite as ideal. But Align Today is the primary tool that I use now, and this is in a place that we can build all those one-page things, and then we can assign priorities, and then we can look at them on primarily a weekly basis is the main thing I'm looking for, but we can also look at them on a daily basis as well. And I can see how people are doing. I can see, oh, look, I'm in the green on target, but I'm only 49%, and yet I've got a couple people who are in red. So there are dashboard views both for myself and for the company in here. There's a lot of great tools, and you can actually do a really low-cost kind of thing. There is a per-user cost to this, but it's very, very inexpensive.